He bet I would fall apart in front of everyone. He thought the bright lights, the music, and the eyes of hundreds of guests would be too much for me. When security started walking toward me, he leaned back with a small smile, like he had already won. That smile told me everything. He believed I would either shout, cry, or beg. He believed I would prove him right. Instead, I reached into my jacket and held onto the envelope I had been carrying all night. Stick with me while I share my story, and if it touches you, don't forget to support our channel by hitting that subscribe button, dropping a like, and sharing it with the people you care about. The ballroom looked perfect that night. Gold lights reflected off the glass walls. Waiters moved quietly between tables. A soft piano played near the stage. This event was supposed to celebrate years of hard work. I had helped build this company from an empty office and a risky loan. I had worked weekends, missed family holidays, and taken pay cuts in the early days so we could survive. I believed in what we created. When he stepped onto the stage, people clapped. He thanked investors, praised the team, and talked about a bright future. Then his tone changed. He said that sometimes leadership requires difficult decisions. He said that I would be stepping away because I had been struggling personally. He didn't look at me when he said it. He looked at the crowd. I felt every pair of eyes turn toward me. The word unstable floated across the room like smoke. I heard whispers. I saw confusion on some faces, pity on others. 2 security guards began walking in my direction. Their steps were slow but clear. My heart was beating fast, but my face stayed calm. I had prepared myself for this moment. For weeks, I had sensed something was wrong. Meetings had happened without me. Documents were delayed. I wasn't included in decisions that I normally handled. I didn't argue tonight because arguing would give him exactly what he wanted. I stood up slowly. My chair made a small sound against the floor. The music had stopped. The room felt heavy. I walked toward the stage before security could reach me. Every step felt steady. When I reached him, he looked surprised. Maybe he expected me to shout. Maybe he thought I would cause a scene. I didn't. I handed him the envelope. It wasn't thick, but it carried weight. Inside were official documents, signed and dated. Proof that I knew more than he thought. Proof that I wasn't confused or unstable. Proof that I had been watching carefully. He took it with a tight smile, still pretending everything was under control. But as he opened it and read the first page, his face changed. The color drained. His jaw tightened. The room was silent now. Security stopped moving. For the first time that night, he wasn't smiling. He kept reading the first page, then the second. His hands were steady, but his eyes moved faster than before. I could see the moment it hit him. He understood what those papers meant. The documents were formal notices. They showed that an independent review of the company's financial records had already begun. They showed that certain transactions had been flagged and that a legal clause in our partnership agreement had been activated. A clause that allowed me to request a full investigation if there was evidence of financial misconduct. He had forgotten about that clause. Years ago, when we first built the company, I insisted we protect each other from worst-case scenarios. We agreed that if one partner ever acted against the company's interests, the other had the right to step in and freeze major decisions until a review was complete. Back then, it felt like a safety net for both of us. Now it was something else. He looked up at me, forcing a smile again. "We'll discuss this later," he said quietly, trying to keep his voice calm. I didn't raise my voice. "There is nothing to discuss," I replied. "It's already in motion." A few board members stood from their tables, confused and concerned. They had believed what he told them. They believed I was overwhelmed, that I was making mistakes. They didn't know that for months, I had noticed numbers that didn't match, transfers that didn't make sense, and reports that were delayed without reason. I didn't accuse him publicly. I didn't need to. The paperwork spoke clearly. One of the board members, a man named Everett Shaw, asked what was happening. My former partner tried to take control of the situation, saying it was a misunderstanding. But I calmly explained that certain financial activities required clarification and that the agreement required a temporary hold on executive authority until everything was reviewed. The word hold changed the air in the room. That meant he could not make major decisions. He could not move funds. He could not sign new deals without oversight. The same man who had just tried to remove me in front of hundreds of guests was now the one being restricted. Security quietly stepped back. They no longer looked at me. Their attention shifted to him, unsure of who was actually in charge at that moment. I watched his confidence crack, just slightly. He He wasn't used to losing control. He had always been the louder one, the charming one. I had been the quiet strategist, the one who read every line before signing, the one who asked uncomfortable questions. And now those questions were standing in the middle of the ballroom. The music didn't restart. Conversations didn't resume. Investors whispered to each other. Some walked out early. The celebration was over, even if no one officially announced it. He folded the papers carefully, trying to act composed. But I could see it in his eyes. He hadn't expected me to fight back. And this was only the beginning. After the gala ended in silence, the real storm began the next morning. I didn't go home and celebrate. I didn't call anyone to brag. I went straight to my office before sunrise. The city was still quiet, but my phone wasn't. Emails were already coming in from board members asking for clarification. Investors wanted reassurance. Attorneys requested copies of the documents. The investigation was no longer private. By noon, an external auditing firm had arrived. They were professional and calm, carrying laptops and sealed folders. They didn't look dramatic. They didn't accuse anyone loudly. They simply asked for access to financial records, internal transfers, and private holding accounts connected to the company. That was when another name began to surface, a separate limited liability company that most of the board had never heard of. It had been receiving large payments labeled as consulting fees. The amounts weren't small. They were consistent, quiet, hidden inside normal expenses. When I first saw that company name weeks earlier, I felt sick. I wanted to believe there was a reasonable explanation. I had given him the benefit of the doubt for too long. But numbers don't lie when you read them carefully. By the afternoon, the tension inside the building was heavy. Staff members whispered in hallways. Executives avoided eye contact. My former partner stayed in his office with the door closed. He tried to act like everything was routine, but the auditors kept walking in and out with questions he couldn't easily answer. He finally called me into a private conference room. "You're destroying everything we built," he said, his voice low and tight. "I'm protecting it," I replied. He accused me of overreacting. He said the side company was normal business strategy. He claimed it was structured for tax efficiency and expansion planning. But when I asked for full documentation, contracts, disclosures, board approval, he couldn't provide them immediately. That silence told me more than his words. What hurt the most wasn't the money. It was the betrayal. We had built this company with trust. We made decisions together. We promised transparency. I had defended him in front of investors many times. I believed loyalty went both ways. Now I saw the truth. While I was focused on growth and stability, he was building something behind my back. By the end of the week, temporary restrictions were officially placed on major company accounts. Certain transactions were frozen pending review. The board scheduled emergency meetings without him leading them. For the first time since we started the business, he wasn't in control. And for the first time, I realized something important. I wasn't fighting to win against him anymore. I was fighting to make sure the truth came out, no matter where it led. The emergency board meeting was nothing like our usual ones. There was no friendly small talk, no coffee jokes, no relaxed tone. Everyone sat straight, serious, and careful with their words. The auditors presented their early findings. They explained that several large transfers had been redirected through layered accounts before landing in the outside company. The pattern showed planning. It wasn't an accident. It wasn't a one-time mistake. I watched the board members' faces change as the numbers appeared on the screen. He tried to interrupt. He said the transfers were strategic investments. He said timing made them look suspicious. He blamed accounting errors. But when the auditors asked for written approval records, there were gaps. Big gaps. One board member asked him directly why the external company was not disclosed during quarterly reviews. He hesitated. That hesitation said more than any explanation could. Then something unexpected happened. One of the board members admitted that weeks before the gala, he had been approached privately. He was told I was overwhelmed and possibly unfit to continue as partner. He had been asked to support my removal for the good of the company. The room went silent again. Now they understood the full picture. My public humiliation wasn't random. It was part of a plan. If I had been removed quietly, there would have been no one left with the authority to trigger the protective clause. The investigation would never have started. He hadn't just tried to embarrass me. He had tried to eliminate the only obstacle in his way. I stayed calm while they processed this. I didn't speak badly about him. I didn't need to. The facts were clear enough. By the end of the meeting, The board voted to extend the investigation and temporarily suspend his executive powers until completion. It wasn't dramatic. It was procedural. But it was powerful. When the decision was announced, he stared at the table instead of at me. Afterward, he followed me into the hallway. "You think this makes you better than me?" he said quietly. "No," I answered. "It just means I was paying attention." He shook his head, frustrated. For years, he had been the confident face of the company, the one who closed deals with charm and bold promises. He believed he could manage perception better than reality. But perception only lasts so long. Reality always catches up. That night, I sat alone in my office long after everyone left. I looked around at the space we once shared. The framed photos from early projects. The whiteboard with old ideas written in faded ink. I didn't feel victorious. I felt disappointed. Because success built on trust feels strong. But success built on deception eventually collapses. And now the collapse had begun. The investigation moved faster than anyone expected. Within days, more details surfaced. The outside company wasn't just receiving consulting payments. It had been used to purchase property under private ownership, property that should have belonged to our main firm. Profits from those properties were never reported to the board. It was careful, quiet, spread out over time so it wouldn't draw attention. But patterns always leave traces. When federal regulators were notified, things shifted from internal review to something much bigger. Official letters arrived. Requests for records became formal demands. Lawyers were no longer optional, they were necessary. He stopped coming into the office regularly. When he did, he avoided eye contact. His confidence was gone, replaced with short conversations and closed doors. The same man who once commanded every meeting now looked like he was calculating damage. Investors started calling me directly. Not to blame me, but to ask if the company would survive. I answered honestly. I told them the truth was being handled. I didn't promise miracles. I promised transparency. That word meant more now than it ever had. One afternoon, I received a call from a federal investigator asking me to confirm timelines and access to certain documents. The tone was professional but serious. This was no longer just a business disagreement. It was legal. Later that week, formal charges were filed. Wire fraud, financial misrepresentation, corporate embezzlement. When I read the official notice, I felt a strange mix of emotions. Relief that the truth was clear. Sadness that it had come to this. Anger at how easily trust had been broken. The board held one final meeting regarding his position. He didn't attend. His resignation letter was short. No apology. No explanation. Just a statement that he would step away to focus on personal matters. Personal matters. The same words he used about me at the gala. But this time, there was evidence behind them. As the weeks passed, the company slowly stabilized. New controls were added. Auditors completed their review. Some losses were recovered. Not all, but enough to protect the core of what we built. I could have felt satisfied watching his downfall. But I didn't celebrate. Because revenge wasn't about seeing him lose everything. It was about proving that I wasn't what he tried to label me as. I wasn't unstable. I wasn't weak. And I certainly wasn't blind. The gala had been designed to break me. Instead, it revealed who we both truly were. Just when I thought the worst was behind me, I learned something that hurt more than the business betrayal. Her name was Marin Calloway. We had been together for 4 years. She had seen the long nights, the stress, the sacrifices. She used to tell me she admired my discipline, my focus. I believed she understood me better than anyone. A week after the gala, she asked to meet for coffee. Her voice sounded distant on the phone. Calm but cold. We sat across from each other in a quiet cafe. She didn't waste time. She said she had been worried about me for months. She said she heard I had been under too much pressure, that I was becoming obsessive and paranoid about work. She said maybe stepping away from the company was good for me. I felt something tighten in my chest. Who told you that? I asked. She hesitated, then said his name. He had met with her privately before the gala. He told her I was struggling, that I was unstable, that the board was concerned. He painted a picture of me losing control, pushing people away, making irrational decisions. She believed him. Not completely, she said, but enough to doubt me. That hurt more than the investigation ever did. She didn't ask me first. She didn't confront me with questions. She listened to someone who stood to gain from my removal. I thought he was trying to protect the company, she said quietly. And me? I asked. She looked down at her coffee. Silence answered for her. She said she needed space, that everything felt uncertain, that she didn't know who I was anymore. I didn't beg her to stay. I didn't argue. I was tired of defending myself against lies. When we walked out of the cafe, she went one direction and I went the other. Just like that, for years ended without shouting, without drama, just quiet doubt planted by someone I once trusted. That night, I sat alone in my apartment. No celebration. No comfort. Just silence. For a moment, I questioned everything. Maybe I should have seen the signs earlier. Maybe I trusted too easily. Maybe I focused so much on protecting the company that I didn't protect my personal life. But then I remembered something important. Truth does not need loud defense. It needs patience. The investigation was still moving forward. Facts were still being uncovered. Eventually, the full story would be public record. And when it was, people would see clearly. Not because I shouted, but because I stood firm. The legal process took months, but it moved steadily. Court hearings replaced board meetings. Lawyers spoke more than executives. Financial records were laid out in clear detail, line by line. The hidden transfers, the shell accounts, the undisclosed properties. Everything was documented. I attended every hearing quietly. I didn't look at him much. When I did, I barely recognized the man sitting at the defense table. The confidence was gone. The sharp suits were still there, but they didn't carry the same energy. He looked tired. Witnesses explained how funds were redirected. Experts described how internal controls were bypassed. The evidence wasn't emotional, it was factual. Numbers, signatures, dates. When the verdict finally came, it was firm. Convictions on multiple counts. Financial penalties. Possible prison time pending sentencing. There was no dramatic reaction from me. No smile. No celebration. Just closure. Outside the courthouse, reporters gathered around him. I slipped out a side exit. I didn't want cameras. I didn't want attention. I wanted peace. Back at the company, the board formally offered me full executive control. They admitted they should have asked more questions earlier. They apologized for believing rumors without proof. I accepted leadership, but on new terms. Stronger oversight. Full transparency. Independent quarterly reviews. No decision made without shared accountability. The company slowly regained trust in the market. Investors returned. New projects were launched carefully, not aggressively. Growth came back, slower but solid. As for my personal life, I kept things simple. I didn't rush into anything new. I focused on rebuilding myself the same way I rebuilt the business, steady and clear-minded. One evening, almost a year after the gala, I was leaving the office when I saw him across the street near a parking structure. He was alone, dressed casually this time. He noticed me too. For a moment, we just stood there. He walked over slowly. "I never thought you'd go that far," he said. "I didn't think you would either," I replied. He nodded, looking down. "I thought you'd break." "I almost did," I admitted. "But not the way you expected." There was nothing else to say. The past couldn't be rewritten. As I walked away, I realized something important. He tried to remove me publicly to protect his secret. But in doing that, he gave me the stage to reveal the truth. He bet I would have a breakdown. Instead, I handed him papers. And that made all the difference. In the months that followed, life became quieter. Not easier, just clearer. The company grew again, but this time I didn't chase headlines or fast expansion. I focused on structure, ethics, and people who valued honesty over speed. We rebuilt our reputation slowly. Every contract was reviewed carefully. Every decision was documented. No shortcuts. No hidden accounts. No secrets. Investors began to trust us again, not because of flashy presentations, but because we answered every question directly. Employees who had once been nervous now felt secure. The culture changed. Transparency wasn't just a word anymore. It became policy. As for me, I changed too. I stopped trying to prove myself to people who had already chosen doubt. I understood something I hadn't before. Betrayal doesn't just reveal the other person. It reveals you. It shows how you respond when everything you built is shaken. I didn't win because he lost. I won because I stayed steady. About a year later, I received a short letter forwarded through legal channels. It was from him. No anger this time. No excuses. Just a simple sentence. "I underestimated you." I folded the letter and placed it in a drawer. Not as a trophy. Not as revenge. Just as a reminder. Because the truth is, I never wanted to defeat him. I wanted fairness. I wanted integrity. I wanted the company we built to stand on something solid. He thought humiliation would silence me. He thought pressure would make me collapse. But pressure doesn't always break you. Sometimes it refines you. The gala that night was supposed to be my ending. The spotlight, the whispers, the security walking toward me. It was meant to close my chapter. Instead, it opened a new one. Not louder. Not dramatic. Stronger. And if there's one thing I learned through all of it, it's this. When someone tries to push you out in front of the world, don't react with emotion. React with preparation. Don't fight with noise. Fight with facts. Because the most powerful revenge isn't destroying someone. It's standing tall while the truth does the work for you.